Okay, next up from DCEO, we have Alyson Grady. She's been a great team member with all of our regional work. She's the Deputy Director of Regional Economic Development for Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We call that DCEO. I've heard it called DECEO. I've heard it called a lot of different things. Back in the day, it was DECA. It's DCEO. And then also Cass Peters, who we've been working with recently, is the Chief of Staff at Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Alyson has a BS in biology from Truman State, and Cass has a bachelor's in political science and government from Davidson College. Let's give a warm welcome to Cass and Alyson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cass Peters. Like Patrick said, I'm here from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We're really excited to join the conference and be in Bloomington-Normal. It's an area that's leveraged a lot of our programs, and we've seen tremendous growth. And when Patrick calls, I always answer the phone. So upon his invitation, we were looking to chat a little bit about some of the new programs that the Department of Commerce has been able to get passed from the General Assembly to really spur business attraction, business development opportunities in the Bloomington-Normal area across the state as well. But also just give a little perspective about how busy we are, what's the scale of projects that we have in our pipeline, the types of projects, and some general sort of updates from us about what we see, the state's looking at moving forward, and particularly some areas that are, a focus and priority for Bloomington-Normal. So again, just really excited about all Bloomington-Normal's success. I think in Patrick's intro, many of our tax credit programs are, heavily levered, and we're very excited about having such great local partners. So I want to say thanks to Patrick for that. So one of the things we wanted to talk about is just, broadly what sectors we're seeing have the most excitement and sort of momentum in 2023. I don't think any of this is going to be surprising, but again, I think some of the really high level sort of areas of focus, obviously the TD&L, transportation, distribution, and logistics, just Illinois' central location, high quality infrastructure, and transportation sort of prowess is really very present all across our projects, generally with business development. The state is also, with the Department of Commerce, has made clean energy jobs a very central focus between the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, or you may hear that called CEJA, which charges my department with creating a lot of workforce programs that will ultimately train and upskill existing workers for clean energy jobs of the future. So that was a historic bill that was passed in 2021. And then also with our Reimagining Electric Vehicles Act, which I'll let my colleague Ali share a little bit more about some of our recent wins from the General Assembly, both in veto session in December and lame duck earlier in January. But I think generally with the clean energy jobs, we're just at a pivotal moment as a country where billions of dollars of capital investment, thousands of jobs are being created as we pivot to a clean energy economy. And Bloomington-Normal already has, Rivian here to be, a tremendous partner in growth. I know folks have already covered that, but there's, every week you'll see a tremendous announcement. And we're here to say that we're in competition for a lot of those projects as well. So again, that focuses in on the electric vehicle, component manufacturing, renewable energy. Here we have projects all across the span, all across the sector, solar panel manufacturing, you name it. Green energy material and energy storage. So energy storage is, essentially the large batteries, which will help establish mini grids and, nicely combine with existing utilities to provide renewable energy sort of locations and sectors. So as well as food manufacturing, and again, Bloomington-Normal is right on the forefront with that, with a lot of the things we just discussed with Ferrero. And so, again, I think these are the sort of high level notes that I would say, again, are focused in terms of which projects in which pipeline within our business development, business attraction universe are, the sectors that are most present. I think that bottom line is, directly in response to some of Patrick's earlier thoughts, which is, just at a high level before coming here today, we were at about 15,000 jobs in our pipeline that we're competing for with over $17 billion. So, we're just really tremendously busy, and we're always looking for more projects. So if folks know, we'd be certainly happy to engage in the details with existing projects, but it's just a tremendously exciting time to have so many state resources that we can lever to create jobs and capital investment all across the state, but especially in areas that, like Bloomington-Normal, that have seen so much previous growth. So what are we also hearing from some of the site selectors and companies that we've been in conversations with? Really, one of the biggest things we hear is that folks need to get to market really fast, and that they're looking for no longer than 24 months to be essentially in operation, and they're looking to have sites be shovel ready at the time of which they're making their decision. And so there's a need for additional utility infrastructure investment in existing greenfield or brownfield sites to really maximize and go to the top of the list for additional sites that, as we work with local partners to identify how do we actually present our sites in the best possible way to be maximally attractive. It really is, the speed and what existing infrastructure investments do sites have that are the differentiators. The other things is, obviously the site size. We are, again, there's some of those projects that you're talking about that are very mega sized projects do need quite a large amount of acreage. So again, we're probably seeing most of that be in the 400+ acre location. And so I think I talked a little bit about this too, but the position ourselves for success, that site readiness point is something that comes up really regularly, and I think is again an opportunity for differentiation with sites. So focusing in on how ready a site is from water, sewer perspective, as well as utilities and any preliminary environmental investigations that are needed. Obviously, ensuring the site is zoned for industrial, and ensuring that you're connected with our sister agency, public-private partner, Intersect Illinois, to make sure your site is loaded into their database. And we have strong partners like Patrick and all across the state that help us identify sites being responsive to specific RFPs or any other requests for information. And then I think the other thing that's even more recent, and we'll get a little bit more of this in our presentation later, is having some additional conversation about what local property tax abatement, local incentives are available, or opportunities for big projects. Some of the recent bills that have been passed, the Reimagining Electric Vehicles Act, for example, is something that allows for local governments, local taxing bodies to provide property tax abatement to potential employers. And so we're seeing, the timeline that we often get to respond to these companies is pretty short. And so any kind of advanced groundwork that can happen about if we're going to compete for a $1 billion, 1,000-person job creator, manufacturing company, what kind of groundwork that you all, the locals, can do to essentially have some conversation and be in a range to put Patrick and others in a good position for being as responsive as possible. So knowing that, when we're competing with other states, they're doing the same thing and having conversations about what level of property tax abatement that they can offer. With that, I'll bring up Ally.
Thanks, Cass. So with this, there's always things that we can talk about and keep moving forward with ways to help position those projects coming in. As Cass and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday, as we looked at the RFIs and requests that we've gotten from site selectors and from consultants over the last 18 months, it really does vary. A 20-acre project is just important as a 400-acre project. They need some similar but different things, but that speed to market is still really critical. The other thing is making sure that we position ourselves well from a business perspective, that we are the great place to live, to work. We have that quality of life here in Illinois that companies want with this. But with that, we've also done a lot of work over the last couple of years of really taking an examine of what DCEO's programming looks like, how it can help, where can we be in the emerging markets that are coming out here, where the focus of the state is going to be. So looking at that, as Cass mentioned, we have done a lot of updates in the last 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks on changing some of our programs coming out, both in veto session, which was the end of November, beginning of December, and then in lame duck. So a couple of these changes I'm just gonna talk about here briefly to let you know where we're going. The first ones in veto session really were around the Reimagining Electric Vehicle Act, REV Act. They look like small changes, but as we've been working with this program since it launched in late 2021, we've listened to what companies said. We've listened to what consultants say about what may or may not have been working in the program, and are we hitting that demographic that we need to. We can sit in our room in Springfield and Chicago and come up with these great ideas, but sometimes once you get them actually working, you do have to make some small changes. So these first couple things, one wouldn't think that removing the word primarily and removing the word substantially would make big changes. But when you're talking to a business that is moving into a new sector of the electric vehicles, they're not necessarily going to want to put 51% of their business in that area until they're sure that market goes there. So this is allowing a little bit more competition in and able to use this and making it easier on our businesses to do this. We also initially, the program had a very tight definition of what a component manufacturer is. We made some changes to broaden that scope. So we're making sure that we are actually capturing what needs to go in so we can advance that electric vehicle market here in Illinois. We also looked at upping the incentives a little bit more with this from where they were initially. This will position Illinois to be even that more competitive than our other states that were looking at this. One of the other big changes that came out of the veto session legislation is it allows for a renewal of, and that is supposed to be REV, sorry, I realized this morning I had a typo on there, for one additional term, not team. So, but normally our REV agreements right now initially were either 10 or 15 years. They now can be renewed up to 20 to 30 years. And this is one of those components where Cass mentioned having those conversations locally. REV does allow local units of government to provide property tax abatement through the duration of the term of the contract. So now we could, I didn't say you had to, but could take those property tax abatements out to 30 years. Now, of course, to do that, that's going to take a little bit more discussion on the local level. Are you willing to do this? What are you willing to look at with that? And those are conversations that need to happen ahead of the 5 days that we have to turn around a proposal or something like that. The other thing is we recognize is EDGE is our economic development for a growing economy program. It's been our bread and butter tax incentive program for years. We've had companies that have EDGE that may be moving in and would qualify under REV, or maybe somebody that came in under REV, but they've transitioned back. And instead of them losing all of their incentives, we've set it up so we can transition a little bit better with our companies across both programs. These changes were signed into law by Governor Pritzker in December on this, but we weren't done making some changes. So then we come to lame duck session, and this was early January. I will say these changes have passed both chambers in the General Assembly. It is currently awaiting Governor Pritzker's signature on this. So these things will be coming with that. Implementation by the department will be coming in the future too. So give us a little bit here to work with this. But one of the big ones that came out of this legislation is the Invest in Illinois Act. Everybody's heard it called the closing fund that's out there. So this is another tool that we have to be able to provide some of that upfront capital that we're hearing companies do need as they're making very large investments in coming to the state to provide some assistance that we need with this. But we didn't stop there. We touched a lot of our programs across the board. We went back and looked at our EDGE program. And we talk about this as modernizing our but-for component to that program that was always there. We had to do the cost differential analysis, the out-of-state options, and we were making that somewhat burdensome on the companies that are considering coming here to Illinois. We took a look at what other people are doing, what other states are out there, and we're really looking to still provide and gather the information that we need to make sure that we are making responsive decisions on behalf of the taxpayers for the state of Illinois. That's what we're charged with doing, but also making it so it's easier to work with our private sector going through here. We've increased the tax credit for job retention. This is just as important for us to keep the businesses that we have here that are looking to expand instead of making them go look somewhere else. We want to make sure that, you know, we love having you here. We want to make sure we keep you here. One of the other big things, and I think this is probably going to help Bloomington-Normal, the area here, is we increase the sizes of enterprise zones that can be out there. So they'll be able to expand a little bit beyond. They'll still have, you know, a designated amount of square miles that can be in any enterprise zone, but we increase those thresholds going forward. Under our high impact business, and again, these are very large investment projects that have high numbers of jobs coming with them that aren't currently located in an enterprise zone. This allows them to have kind of those enterprise zone benefits with it. But we're allowing them to renew a term with it as well. Again, these are large businesses that are coming in here, and we modernize that but-for agreement too. But we're not done there. So now that we've all learned how to call this Reimagining Electric Vehicle Act, we changed the name because, you know, we're the state, we do that. The good news is we didn't change the acronym, because if they would have done that, I would have messed this up for years. But it is now the Reimagining Energy and Vehicles Act. So this does a couple things. On the one point we heard with component manufacturers, the threshold initially was $20 million to even start looking at a tier 1 component manufacturer under REV. That can be a lot to invest in something like that. We've brought those initial minimum thresholds down to where it equals where we have it for EDGE at 2.5 million, and 50 new jobs or 10% of the worldwide employment of a company. So that equalizes the playing field a little bit more between REV and EDGE in what we're looking at, but allows those extra incentives that you would get under REV for this sector that we are very specifically targeting here. We also then, this is where the energy comes in with this. We expanded this to include manufacturers of solar, renewable energy storage components that are also looking at manufacturing here in Illinois. As Kaz mentioned, we have a large focus right now through Governor Pritzker and activities for the administration in growing this clean energy economy across Illinois. And this is another way to bring it online. Last year, they also passed the MICRO Act, which is Manufacturing Illinois Chips for a Real Economy. And we, with that, when that act first came out, it really mirrored REV where it was. Well, then we went back and made changes to REV in veto session. So we made those same changes to micro here with this bill. So it updates again that retained employees and the compensation requirement. We just wanted to expand the data that we can use to help determine that. It gives us a little bit more, again, flexibility as we're working with our companies coming through here. But another thing I wanted to talk about briefly here, and we don't have all the details worked out about this, but right now DCEO is working on a capital grant program that is going to focus on site readiness. I, with my regional economic development team in November and December, we worked and held roundtables around the state, talking with our economic development partners and listening to what is needed. You know, what do you need for site readiness? What are some of those barriers you're seeing to develop? As we've been talking and kicking around what we want to look at here at the department. So we're still working on it, but we expect to have this grant program here in the very near future that's going to help with getting sites to that next level of being ready. This is a capital grant program. It'll be part of the Rebuild Illinois program coming out. It will require a match from the grantee, so great, but we're not going to fund everything with it. But one thing is, if this is something where you think you have a site that might need some work, that could be a capital or bondable expense, we can, and my team is happy to work with you to get you set up in the Grant Accountability and Transparency portal. That is the first requirement for becoming a grantee at the state of Illinois, just so you're positioned and ready when we actually do come out with that information on this program that should be here in the next couple months.
Yep.
Fair. And we're happy to help get you set up with that. The other thing is, because I'm sure you're all interested in wanting to make sure to know when that opportunity becomes available, just feel free to reach out to me. And okay, so I forgot to put the slide with the contact information, but I have cards here. My team does a newsletter every week that puts all these opportunities that are out there in there. If you don't currently get that from Team Red, let me know. We'll make sure we get you on the distribution list and go from there. So that's kind of the quick stuff that we have going on right now. And I think we're happy to take any questions. Oh, great. I remember the last time we had that. That's great.
I can ask questions. Feel like I drove probably half as long as the longest guy, so could you describe the incentive relative to other states? And I heard we're exploring that. We're trying to figure, are you feeling like we are competitive relative to Indiana and Wisconsin and Missouri? And I realize you can't just give everything away, but ultimately it's a competitive landscape. We're trying to attract jobs and we're trying to attract practice development dollars. So curious how you react to that.
Yeah, no, I think I would say yes, we are. I think with these changes that we just walked through, the renewal, which is basically doubling the rev benefit for electric vehicle renewable energy companies, manufacturing companies, that plus the closing fund for large projects, we are incredibly competitive. I think the other thing, we were hearing about from many larger companies that the need for upfront capital, which the closing fund will really help with, especially for large projects. And then I think if you zoom out, the other thing we hear from companies is its incentives are important, but the workforce, the quality of living, the infrastructure, the site readiness, the site availability, workforce costs are all, and a skilled labor are all really important factors that go into decision making that I think, the state has in strong strengths in. But then in addition to those changes we just walked through, which again really are directly from company feedback during our conversations in business development, business attraction. I think that we will have a lot of projects come to the state in this year based on these changes.
We have heard, as we've talked with consultants and site selectors, even in these last couple of weeks since this legislation passed, Illinois is getting more of a look on a lot of things. They can see that we are really putting our best foot forward, where 6, 12, 24 months ago, Illinois might not have been on the radar. We are. So, and that's great. And we need to continue to tell our good story along that. And that's another initiative for the department this year is yes, Illinois is here. We are open. We are ready for business. We're here to support you, not only with getting you here with dollars and that support, but also that workforce development, the pipeline development that we're really focusing on as well, because that's just as important.
And I would say like the other changes that we walked through, there have been some, challenges people have said about, additional red tape, or it's challenging to apply for tax credits and takes a long period of time and it's uncertain. The changes we're walking through here are reduction in red tape, making it easier, making it streamlined, fixing the statutory language that we're required to adhere to allow for more business-friendly environment. And so, what we went to the General Assembly and were successfully able to argue for is, look, we want to win more projects. here's what the changes we need to be able to do that, and we got everything we asked for.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your leadership.
You mentioned you expanded the time frame that you can do property tax abatement.
Mhm.
But isn't there also some law in there about school district portion can only commit to a 10 years?
So I'll take that one.
Yes,
So there is essentially the reimagining energy and vehicles, as we just have renamed it and are looking to have it signed, does allow for up to through the life of the agreement, property tax abatement. So right now 15 years, and then again with the option for renewal. So really it's a 30-year period. And that's really how our general counsel and legal team interprets the statute, is that the existing law allows for that property tax abatement, again, at the local level, right? So the state knows that property tax abatement is part of the conversation that we see site selectors, companies being interested in. And we have conversations about, what kind of economic impact would this massive project be for an area? And I think that helps locals have those conversations about what they're comfortable with. And I think the reason we're raising that as a potential opportunity for some, pre-work is it's helpful to have, at least a little bit of a lay of the land before the big project comes knocking. Because when you're a little bit up against the clock and you're on a tighter timeline. And I think one of the things we're doing is to try to market and let everyone know that this is something that's in the law, right? And that to be good partners from the state and the local perspective, having some groundwork laid is going to be really beneficial.
And with it, it's not like it has to be 100% abatement for 30 years or anything like that. That's where the discussion at the local level of where is the community, where are the governmental entities comfortable with doing it? Is it partial? Is it a stair step down over a period of years? But you have a longer, the law allows for a longer timeline that you can provide that option. So it can go beyond that 10 years. Anything else?
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Cass and I, there's nothing worse than after losing a deal, because economic development is highly competitive. And a lot of times I tell you double coded words, we know when that ends up in Michigan or Indiana. And, we're on the phone like, what happened? And it's like, well, look what the other packages are. Look how we're competing. And so that, feedback from the site selectors, from our businesses, from our regional economic developers, we do have an administration now that does listen and they adapt the programs to our needs. And to sort of follow up on that one about making it 30 years, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So anything we would do would be, based off of economic impact, because we want to make sure. It's almost some of the arguments I've made for some of these other states, and they're like, well, you need to compete because they're doing this. And I'm like, well, their schools won't keep up, their police won't keep up, their fire won't keep up. Like, there has to be a return for us to keep this thing going. So, but yeah, they've been great partners. I'm glad we got new tools in the toolbox. It's not something that we've always had in the past.